He could pass for Italian. Or maybe Portuguese. Leave it to me, I said calmly, thinking that I knew the reason, at last, why she'd asked me to meet with her. I'll get on it tomorrow. I know how to get in touch with him, for photos and whatever, although there'd be no mistaking his face at a customs check. I'll fix it. Thanks, she said, meeting my eyes with such fervent intensity that my heart began to beat hard against my chest. It is always a fool's mistake, Didier once said to me, to be alone with someone you shouldn't have loved. What are you doing, Lynn? Sitting here with you, I replied, smiling. No, I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay in Bombay? Why? I was going to ask you, if you want to come with me, to find Khaled. I laughed, but she didn't laugh with me. That's the second best offer I've had today. The second best? She drawled. What was the first? Someone invited me to go to the war, in Sri Lanka. She clamped her lips tightly around an angry response, but I held my hands up in surrender, and spoke quickly. I'm just kidding, Carla, just kidding. Take it easy. I mean, it's true about the invitation to go to Sri Lanka, but I'm just, you know. She relaxed, smiling again. I'm out of practice. It's been a long time, Lynn. So, why the invitation now? Why not? That's not good enough, Carla, and you know it. Okay. She sighed, glancing at me and then looking away to follow the breeze weaving wave patterns on the sand. I guess I was hoping to find something like what we had in Goa. What about Jeet? I asked, ignoring the opening she'd given me. How does he feel about you going off to find Khaled? We lead separate lives. We do what we want. We go where we want. Sounds breezy, I offered, struggling to find a word that wasn't a lie but wouldn't offend. Didier made it sound more serious than that. Told me the guy asked you to marry him. He did, she said flatly. And what? And will you marry him, I mean? Yes, I think I will. Why? Why not? Don't start that again. Sorry, she said, sighing through a tired smile. I've been running with a different crowd. Why marry Jeet? He's a nice guy, he's healthy, and he's loaded. And, hey, I think he'll do a better job of spending his money than he does. So what you're telling me is that you're ready to die for this love? She laughed and then turned to me, suddenly serious again. Her eyes, pale with moonlight, her eyes, the green of water lilies after the rain, her long hair, black as forest river stones. Her hair that was like holding the night itself in the wrap of my fingers. Her lips, starred with incandescent light. Lips of camellia petal softness warmed with secret whispers. Beautiful. And I loved her. I loved her still so much, so hard, but with no heat or heart at all. That falling love, that helpless, dreaming, soaring love, was gone. And I suddenly knew in those seconds of cold adoration, I suppose, that the power she'd once held over me was also gone. Or, more than that, her power had moved into me, and had become mine. I held all the cards. And then I wanted to know. It wasn't good enough to just accept what had happened between us. I wanted to know everything. Why didn't you tell me, Carla? She gave an anguished little sigh, and stretched her legs out to bury her bare feet in the sand. Watching the small cascades of soft sand spill over her moving feet, she spoke in a dull, flat tone, as if she was composing a letter, or recalling a letter, perhaps, that she'd written once and never sent to me. I knew you were going to ask me, and I think that's why I've waited so long to get in touch with you. I let people know that I was around, and I asked after you, but I didn't do anything, until today, because I knew you'd ask me. If it makes it any easier, I interrupted, sounding harder than I'd intended. I know you burned down Madame Jo's place. Did Ghani tell you that? Ghani? No, I figured that one out myself. Ghani did it for me, he arranged it. That was the last time I spoke to him. The last time I spoke to him was about an hour before he died. Did he tell you anything about her? She asked, perhaps hoping that there were some parts of it she wouldn't have to tell me. About Madame Jo? No, he didn't say a word. He told me a lot, she sighed. He filled in a few gaps. I think it was Ghani who tipped me over the edge with her. He told me she had Rajan following you, and she only pulled her strings with the cops to get you arrested when Rajan told her you made love to me. I always hated her, but that did it. It was one thing too many. She couldn't let me have it, that time with you. She wouldn't let me have it. So I called in some dues with Ghani, and he arranged it. The riot. It was a great fire. I lit some of it myself. She broke off, staring at her feet in the sand, and clamped her jaw shut. Reflected lights gleamed in her eyes. For a moment I let myself imagine how those green eyes must have blazed with firelight as she'd watched the palace burn. I know about the States, too, I said after a while. I know what happened there. She looked at me quickly, reading my eyes. Lisa, she said. I didn't answer. Then, knowing instantly, as women do, what she couldn't possibly know, she smiled. That's good, Lisa, and you. You and Lisa. That's very good. My expression didn't change, and her smile faded as she looked down at the sand once more. Did you kill anyone, Lynn? When? I asked, not sure if she was talking about Afghanistan or the much smaller war against Chua and his gang. Ever. No. I'm glad, she breathed, sighing again. I wish. She was silent again for a while. From somewhere beyond the deserted beach we heard the sounds of the festival. Happy, roaring laughter rising over the blare of a brass band. Much closer, ocean music gushed onto the soft ascending shore, and the palms above us trembled in the cooling breeze. When I went there, when I walked into his house, into the room where he was standing, he smiled at me. He was, actually, happy to see me. And for a split second, I changed my mind, and I thought it was over. Then, I saw something else, right there in the middle of his smile, something dirty, and, he said, I knew you'd be back for more, one of these days, or something like that. And he started looking around like he was making sure nobody was gonna bust in on us. It's okay, Carla. When he saw the gun, it was worse, because he started, not begging, but apologizing, and it was real clear, that he knew what he did to me. He knew, every part of it, and how bad it was. And that was much worse. And then he was dead. There wasn't a lot of blood. I thought there would be. Maybe there was later. And I don't remember the rest, until I was in the plane with Cater's arm around me. She was quiet. I leaned over to pick up a conical shell descending in spirals to a sharp, eroded point. I pressed it into my palm until it pierced the skin, and then threw it away across the rippled sand. When I looked at her again, I found that she was staring at me and frowning hard. What do you want? She asked bluntly. I want to know why you never told me about Cotterby. Do you want it straight? Of course I do. I couldn't trust you, she declared, looking away again. That's not exactly right, I mean, I didn't know if I could trust you. I think, now, I know, I could have trusted you all along. Okay. My teeth were touching, and my lips didn't move. I tried to tell you. I tried to get you to stay with me in Goa. You know that. It would have made a difference, I snapped, but then sighed just as she had, and relaxed my tone. It might have made a difference if you'd told me that you worked for him, that you recruited me for him. When I ran away, when I went to Goa, I was in a bad way. The Sapna thing. That was my idea. Did you know that? No Jesus, Carla. Her eyes narrowed as she read the angry disappointment in my face. Not the killing part, she explained, and her expression was shocked, I think, to realize that I'd misunderstood what she'd said, and that I believed her capable of devising the Sapna killings. That was all Ghani's idea, his spin on it. They needed to get stuff in and out, through Bombay, and they needed help from people who didn't want to give it. My idea was to create a common enemy, Sapna, and to get everybody working with us to defeat him. It was supposed to be done with posters, and graffiti, and some harmless bomb hoaxes, to make it seem like there was a dangerous, charismatic leader out there. But Ghani didn't think it was scary enough. That's why he started the killings. And you left, for Goa. Yeah. You know the very first place I heard about the killings. What Ghani was doing with my idea? It was at that village in the sky, that lunch you took me to. Your friends were talking about it. And it really shook me up that day. I stuck it out for a while, trying to stop it, somehow. But it was hopeless. And then Cater told me you were in jail, but you had to stay there until Madam Joe did what he wanted her to do. And then he got me to work on the Pakistani, the young general. He was a contact of mine, and he liked me. So I did it. I worked him, while you were in there, until Cater got what he wanted. And then I just quit. I'd had enough. But you went back to him. I tried to get you to stay with me. Why? What do you mean? She was frowning and seemed irritated by the question. Why did you want me to stay with you? Isn't that obvious? No, I'm sorry. It's not. Did you love me, Carla? I'm not asking if you loved me like I loved you. I mean, did you love me at all? Did you love me at all, Carla? I liked you. Yeah, no, it's true. I liked you more than anyone else I knew. That's a lot for me, Lynn. My jaw was locked tight, and I turned my head away from her. She waited for a few moments and then spoke again. I couldn't tell you about Cater. I couldn't. It would have felt like I was betraying him. Betraying me was different, I guess. Fuck, Lynn, it wasn't like that. If you'd stayed with me, we both would have been out of that world, but even then I couldn't have told you. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You wouldn't stay with me, so I never thought I'd see you again. Then I got a message from Cater saying you were in Gupta's place, killing yourself with smack, and he needed me to help him get you out of there. That's how I got back into it. That's how I went back to him. I just don't get it, Carla. What don't you get? You worked for him and Ghani, for how long, before the Sapna thing? About 4 years. So, you must have seen a lot of other stuff go down. You must have heard about it, at the very least. You're working for the Bombay Mafia, for fuck's sake, or a goddamn branch of it. You're working for one of Bombay's biggest gangsters, like I was. You knew they killed people, before Ghani went psycho with his Sapna gang. Why, after all that, did you suddenly get freaked out with the Sapna thing? I don't get it. She'd been watching me closely. I knew she was clever enough to see that I was striking back at her with the questions, but her eyes told me that she saw more than that. Although I'd tried to hide it, I knew she'd picked up the skepticism barbed with righteous censure in my tone. When I finished, she took a breath and seemed about to speak, but then she paused as if reconsidering her reply. You think I left them, she began at last, with a little frown of surprise, and went to Goa because I wanted to be, forgiven, for what I'd done? Or for what I'd been part of? Is that it? Did you? No, I wanted to be forgiven, and I still do, but not for that. I left them because I didn't feel anything at all about the Sapna killings. I was stunned, and, sort of, freaked out, at first, that Ghani had turned the idea around so much. And I didn't like it. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was unnecessary and it would get us all into trouble we didn't need. And I tried to talk Khatterbai out of it. I tried to get them to stop. But I didn't feel anything about it, even when they killed Majid. And I used to like him, you know? I liked old Majid. He was the best of them, in a way. But I didn't feel anything when he died. And I didn't feel it, not even a bit, when Cater told me he had to leave you in jail and let you get beaten up. I liked you, more than I liked anyone else, but I didn't feel bad or sorry. I kind of understood it, that it had to happen, and it was just bad luck that it was happening to you. I felt nothing. And that's when it hit me. That's when I knew I had to get away. What about Goa? You can't tell me that was nothing. No, when you came to Goa and you found me, like I knew you would, it was pretty good. I started to think, this is what it's like, this is what they're talking about. But then you wouldn't stay. You had to go back to him, and I knew he wanted you, maybe even needed you. And I couldn't tell you what I knew about him, because I owed him, and I didn't know if I could trust you. So I let you go. And when you left, I didn't feel anything at all. Not a thing. I didn't want to be forgiven because of what I did. I wanted to be forgiven, and I still want it, and that's why I'm going to Khalid and Idris. Because I don't feel sorry for any of it, and I don't regret a thing. I'm cold inside, Lynn. I like people, and I like things, but I don't love any of them, not even myself, and I don't really care about them. And, you know, the strange thing is, I don't really wish that I did care. And there it was. I had it all. All the truth and detail that I'd needed to know since that day on the mountain, in the withering snow, when Cater had told me about her. I think I'd expected to feel nourished, perhaps, and vindicated, by forcing her to tell me what she'd done and why she'd done it. I think I'd hoped to be released by it, and solaced, just by hearing her tell me. But it wasn't like that. I felt empty. The kind of emptiness that's sad but not distressed, pitying but not broken-hearted, and damaged, somehow, but clearer and cleaner for it. And then I knew what it was, that emptiness. There's a name for it, a word we use often, without realizing the universe of peace that's enfolded in it. The word is free. For what it's worth, I said, reaching out to put my hand against her cheek, I forgive you, Carla. I forgive you, and I love you, and I always will. Our lips met like waves that crest and merge the whirl of storming seas. I felt that I was falling. Free and falling at last from the love that had opened, lotus-layered, within me. And together we did fall the length of her black hair to the still warm sand in the hollow of the sunken boat. When our lips parted, stars rushed through that kiss into her sea-green eyes. An age of longing passed from those eyes into mine. An age of passion passed from my gray eyes into hers. All the hunger, all the fleshed and hope-starved craving, streamed from eye to eye. The moment we met, the laughing wit of Leopold's, the standing babas, the village in the sky, the cholera, the swarm of rats, the secrets that she'd whispered near exhausted sleep, the singing boat on the flood beneath the gateway, the storm when we made love the first time, the joy and loneliness in Goa, and our love reflecting shadows into glass on the last night before the war. And there were no more words. There was no more cleverness as I walked her to a taxi parked nearby. I kissed her again. A long kiss, goodbye. She smiled at me. It was a good smile, a beautiful smile, and almost her best. I watched the red lights of the taxi fuzz and blur and then vanish in the furtherness of night. Alone on the strangely quiet street, I began to walk back to Prabaker's slum. I always thought of it as Prabaker's slum, and I still do, to retrieve my bike. My shadows twirled with every street light, dragging Loath behind me and then rushing on ahead. Ocean songs receded. The road moved beyond the span of coast and into the wide, tree-lined streets of the new peninsula reclaimed from the sea, stone on mortared stone, by the ever-expanding island city. Sounds of celebration streamed into the road from streets around me. The festival had ended, and the people were beginning to return. Daring boys on bicycles flashed between the walkers much too fast, but never touching so much as a flap of sleeve. Impossibly beautiful girls in bright new saris glided between the glances of young men who'd scented their shirts, as well as their skin, with sandalwood soap. Children slept on shoulders, their unwilled arms and legs hanging limp as wet washing on a line. Someone sang a love song, and a dozen voices joined the choruses for each verse. Every man and woman, walking home to slum hut or fine apartment, smiled, listening to the romantic, foolish words. 3 young men singing near me saw my smile, and raised the palms of their hands in question. I lifted my arms and sang the chorus, joining my voice to theirs, and shocking and delighting them with what I knew. They threw their strangers' arms around me and swept our song-connected souls toward the unvanquishable ruin of the slum. Everyone in the whole world, Carla once said, was Indian in at least one past life. And I laughed to think of her. I didn't know what I would do. The first part of it was clear enough. There was the debt to the burly Afghan, Nazir. He'd said to me once, when I'd talked to him of the guilt I continued to feel for Cater's death, "Good gun, good horse, good friend, good battle. You know better way that great Khan, he can die?" And a tiny fragment of that thought or feeling applied to me, too. It was right, somehow, although I couldn't have explained it, even to myself, and fitting for me to risk my life in the company of good friends, and in the course of an important mission. And there was so much more that I had to learn, so much that Kotterbai had wanted to teach me. I knew that his physics teacher, the man he'd told me about in Afghanistan, was in Bombay. And the other teacher, Idris, was in Varanasi. If I made it back to Bombay from Nazir's mission to Sri Lanka, there was a world of learning to discover and enjoy. In the meanwhile, in the city, my place with Sanjay's council was assured. There was work there, and money, and a little power. For a while there was safety, in the Brotherhood, from the long reach of Australian law. There were friends on the council, and at Leopold's, and in the slum. And, yes, maybe there was even a chance for love. When I reached the bike I kept walking on into the slum. I wasn't sure why. I was following an instinct, and drawn, perhaps, by the swollen moon. The narrow lanes, those writhing alleys of struggle and dream, were so familiar to me and so comfortingly safe that I marveled at the fear I'd once felt there. I wandered without purpose or plan, and moved from smile to smile as men and women and children who'd been my patients and neighbors looked up to see me pass. I moved in mists of cooking scent and shower soap, of animal stalls and kerosene lamps, of frankincense and sandalwood streaming upward from 1,000 tiny temples in 1,000 tiny homes. At a corner of one lane I bumped into a man, and as our faces rose to their apologies we recognized one another in the same instant. It was Mukesh, the young thief who'd helped me in the Colaba lockup in the Arthur Road jail. The man whose freedom I demanded when Vikram had paid me out of prison. "Linbaba," he cried, seizing my upper arms in his hands. "So good to see you." "Array, what's happening?" "I'm just visiting," I answered, laughing with him. "What are you doing here? You look great. How the hell are you?" "No problem, Baba. Bilkul fit, Hain. I'm absolutely fit. Have you eaten? Will you take chai?" "Thank you, Baba. No. I am late for a meeting." "Acha?" I muttered. "Oh, yes?" He leaned in close to whisper. "It is a secret, but I know I can trust you, Linbaba. We are meeting with some of those fellows who are with Sapna, the king of thieves." "What?" "Yes," he whispered. "These fellows, they actually know that Sapna. They speak to him almost of every day." "That's not possible," I said. "Oh yes, Linbaba. They are his friends. And we are making the army of poor fellows. We will teach those Muslims who is the real boss here in Maharashtra. That Sapna, he killed the mafia boss, Abdul Ghani, in his own mansion, and put the pieces of his body all around his house. And the Muslims, after that they are learning how to fear us. I must go now. We will see us, before too much time, isn't it? Goodbye, Linbaba." He ran off through the lanes. I turned away, to walk unsmiling into a sudden mood that was anxious and angry and forlorn. And then, as it always did, the city, Bombay, my Mumbai, held me up on the broad back of a nourishing constancy. I found myself at the edge of a devoted crowd gathered before the new, large hut belonging to the Blue Sisters. Men and women stood at the rear of the crowd, while others sat or knelt in a semicircle of soft light at the threshold of the hut. And there in the doorway, framed by halos of lamplight and wreathed about with streamers of blue incense smoke, were the Blue Sisters themselves. Radiant, serene. Beings of such lambent compassion, such sublime equanimity, that in my broken, exiled heart I pledged to love them, as every man and woman who saw them did. At that moment I felt a tug at my shirt sleeve and I turned my head to see what seemed to be the ghost of a gigantic smile with a very small man attached to it. The ghost shook me, grinning happily, and I reached out to enclose it in a hug and then bent forward quickly to touch its feet, in the traditional greeting to a father or mother. It was Kishan, Prabhakar's father. He explained that he was in the city for a holiday with Rukmabai, Prabhakar's mother, and Parvati, his widow. "Shantaram," he admonished me when I started speaking to him in Hindi. "Have you forgotten all your lovely Marathi?" "Sorry, father," I laughed, switching to Marathi. "I'm just so happy to see you. Where is Rukmabai?" "Come," he answered, taking my hand as if I was a child, and leading me through the slum. We arrived at the little group of huts, including my own, that clustered around Kumar's chai shop near the crescent of the sea. Johnny Cigar was there, with Jitendra, Qasim Ali Hussain, and Joseph's wife, Maria. "We were just talking about you," Johnny cried as I shook hands and nodded my greetings. "We were just saying that your hut is empty again, and we were remembering the fire on that first day. It was a big one, nah?" "It was," I muttered, thinking of Raju and the others who'd died in that fire. "So, Shantaram," a voice scolded in Marathi from behind me, "now you are too big a fellow to speak to your simple village mother?" I swung round to see Rukmabai standing close to us. I bent to touch her feet, but she restrained me, and joined her hands together in a greeting. She looked sadder and older within the soft endearments of her smile, and grieving had put a swipe of gray in the black pelt of her hair. But the hair was growing back. The long hair I'd seen falling like a shadow dying was growing back, and there was living hope in the thick, upward sweep of it. Then she directed my gaze to the woman in widow's white standing beside her. It was Parvati, and a child, a son, was standing with her. He was clinging to her sari skirt for support. I greeted Parvati, and when I gave my attention to the boy and looked into his face I was so shocked that my jaw dropped open. I turned to the adults and they all smiled, waggling their heads in the same wonder, for the child was the image of Prabhakar. More than merely resembling him, the boy was the exact duplicate of the man we'd all loved more than any other we knew. And when he smiled at me it was his smile, Prabhakar's vast, world-encompassing smile, that I saw in that small, perfectly round face. Baby DJ? I asked. Can I hold him? Parvati nodded. I held my arms out to him, and he came to me without protest. What's his name? I asked, jigging the boy on my hip and watching him smile. Prabhu, Parvati answered. We called him Prabhakar. Oh Prabhu, Rukmabai commanded, give Shantaram uncle a kiss. The boy kissed me on the cheek, quickly, and then wrapped his tiny arms around my neck with impetuous strength, and squeezed me. I hugged him in return, and held him to my heart. You know, Shantu, Kashan suggested, patting at his round belly, and smiling to fill the world, your house is empty. We are all here. You could stay with us tonight. You could sleep here. Think hard, Lynn, Johnny Cigar warned, grinning at me. The full moon was in his eyes, and pearling his strong white teeth. If you stay, word will get out. First, there'll be a party tonight, and then, when you wake up, there'll be a damn long line of patients, waiting to see you. I gave the boy back into Parvati's arms, and wiped a hand across my face and into my hair. Looking at the people, listening to the breathing, heaving, laughing, struggling music of the slum, all around me, I remembered one of Khaterbai's favorite phrases. Every human heartbeat, he'd said many times, is a universe of possibilities. And it seemed to me that I finally understood exactly what he'd meant. He'd been trying to tell me that every human will has the power to transform its fate. I'd always thought that fate was something unchangeable, fixed for every one of us at birth, and as constant as the circuit of the stars. But I suddenly realized that life is stranger and more beautiful than that. The truth is that, no matter what kind of game you find yourself in, no matter how good or bad the luck, you can change your life completely with a single thought or a single act of love. Well, I'm out of practice sleeping on the ground, I said, smiling at Rukmabai. You can have my bed, Kashan offered. Oh no you don't, I protested. Oh yes I do, he insisted, dragging his cot from outside his hut to mine while Johnny, Jitendra, and the others hugged and mock wrestled me into submission, and our cries and laughter rolled away toward the time-dissolving everness of the sea. For this is what we do. Put one foot forward and then the other. Lift our eyes to the snarl and smile of the world once more. Think, act, feel, add our little consequence to the tides of good and evil that flood and drain the world. Drag our shadowed crosses into the hope of another night. Push our brave hearts into the promise of a new day. With love, the passionate search for a truth other than our own. With longing, the pure, ineffable yearning to be saved. For so long as fate keeps waiting, we live on. God help us. God forgive us. We live on. Acknowledgements. It took me 13 long and troubled years to write Shantaram. The first 2 drafts of the book, 6 years' work and 600 pages, were destroyed in prison. My hands, damaged by the residual effects of frostbite, suffered so badly during the winters in the punishment unit of the prison that many pages of the manuscript journal, which survived and which I still have with me, are stained and streaked with my blood. When I was released, the hardships were severe and unrelenting. I almost, but not quite ever, despaired of finishing the book. The fact that I did complete it, this novel written in blood and tears and exultation that you've just read, is a testament to the help and involvement of a great many people. In making this grateful acknowledgement to them I'm sure that, unintentionally, some names will be omitted from my personal honor roll. I ask those friends and colleagues to forgive me. I want to thank my manager, Tammy Michaels, for whom the true beauty of art is its passionate exaltations, my editor, Margot Rosenblum, the agent for the project, Joe Regal, the first commissioning editor in the USA, Tim Bent, and George Witt, at St. Martin's Press, whose erudition, urbanity, and love for the world of the word are an artist's inspiration. I thank Jessica and Nick, for their being and their forgiveness and their love, Nick, Mary, Paris, and Blaze, for the wondrous gift of their faith in me, my best friend, Shula, who was always the first to read the words, and to speak love for them, and my mother and my stepfather, whose unflagging moral, spiritual, and financial support, beyond what I've ever deserved or could repay, has sustained me, and uplifted this work. Reaching back from this moment through those 13 years, I also want to thank the following colleagues and loved ones. Alan and Maria Almeida, Trish Anderson, Mike and Jenny Arnold, Don Arnold, Cloris and Chris Bath, Christine Boyle, Carrie Boxall, Buckley Bullock, Nick and Helen Burrows, Roger Bushell, Grant Carey, William Carey, Sarah Carroll, Tracy Carroll, Alfredo Cerda, Paul Chamberlain, Narayan Chandrasekhar, Julia Chanels, Glenn and Bindi Choice, Sue Coley, Celia Connor, Tom Cooper, Graham Corcoran, Laurie Cosgrove, Peter Craven, Daniela Crippa, Malcolm Crook, Lee Kunshine, Allison Davidson, Mark Davis, Danny Durs, James Dorabaji, Paul Dornbush, Cameron Drake, Susanna Espy, Peter Feme, Lindsay Forbes, Lisa Friedman, Kate Galloway, Con Gantinas, Richard Gelamanovic, Claudia Glennewinkle, Lynette Good, Nicholas Goodwin, Sheridan Green, David Greenman, Ingrid Grobel, Lutz Grossman, Anna Hampson, Justine Hampson, Meredith Harsh, Jason and Victoria Hartcup, Wendy Hatfield, Robbie Hazelwood, Mark Holden, Chris, Lee, and Ian Hunter, Pietro the Colonel Iodice, Izumi, Bashka Jacobs, Sue Jameson, Sandy Jarrett, Jenny and Stewart, Kate Jones, Julie Jordanu, Katsuya and Michelle, Yusuf Muhammad Khan, Daniel Keys, Judy Kennelly, Val Keogh, Ranyana Koda. Reaching back from this moment through those 13 years, I also want to thank the following colleagues and loved ones: Alan and Maria Almeida, Trish Anderson, Mike and Jenny Arnold, Don Arnold, Cloris and Chris Bath, Christine Boyle, Carrie Boxall, Buckley Bullock, Nick and Helen Burrows, Roger Bushell, Grant Carey, William Carey, Sarah Carroll, Tracy Carroll, Alfredo Cerda,